My husband called me pathetic and disgusting while secretly hiring divorce lawyers with my own money. I changed the locks and moved on. But even after 3 years and a restraining order, he's still reaching out, refusing to let go of the life he threw away. Imagine discovering the person you vowed to spend your life with isn't just lying, but meticulously plotting to ruin you, to strip away your dignity, your career, and your entire financial future. That was my reality, and it started with a cold shoulder and a hidden phone. It all kicked off about 8 months ago. Derek, my husband, just stopped touching me. He'd claim his back hurt and started sleeping on the couch. I didn't want to overreact, but then his phone was suddenly always face down, locked with a new password. Alarm bells started to whisper. Then came the receipts. I found them for these incredibly expensive steakhouse dinners, all during his supposed work meetings. And this was truly infuriating because Derek had been between jobs for 2 years while I was working 60-hour weeks as a marketing director, funding our entire life. Still, I stayed quiet. I thought if I just tried harder, he'd remember why he married me. I bought him that new PlayStation, those golf clubs he'd been eyeing. I cooked his favorite meals, kept myself looking nice. I was desperate for things to go back to normal. The actual breaking point? It hit when I finally gently asked if he was having an affair. The look he gave me, pure disgust. "You're pathetic," he sneered. "No wonder I can't stand to be near you anymore." I tried to bring up the steakhouse receipts, and he just rolled his eyes. "Those were networking dinners. You're so paranoid." That night I reached for him in bed, just a small gesture, and he physically recoiled. "Stop being so desperate. It's disgusting." Later I heard him on the phone laughing. "She actually thinks I'm cheating. If only she knew." That's when I started checking our joint bank account. The one I funded entirely. Thousands were missing. Thousands. I knew I needed help, but I didn't dare tell him. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, paying cash so Derek wouldn't see it on our statements. But of course he found her business card in my purse. That weekend at our friend's dinner party he announced to everyone, "She's so broken she needs a shrink now." Just like that. Our friends started treating me differently. Those pitying looks, the awkward silences. His sister pulled me aside. "Maybe you should try harder. Men have needs." The irony burned deep in my gut. I was paying for everything, including his BMW's maintenance, and I was being told I wasn't doing enough. Then his mother called with her well-rehearsed speech about wifely duties. In my day, we kept our men satisfied. Maybe if you weren't so focused on that career of yours. No wonder he feels emasculated with you flaunting your success. His family group chat became hostile, a digital mob calling me a workaholic who neglected her husband. I soon discovered Derek had been feeding them information. My salary, my work schedule, even my therapy appointments. His mother actually showed up at Dr. Martinez's office, trying to talk sense into me. She claimed Derek told them I'd been refusing him for months and holding money over his head. She even suggested I add him to the house deed to make him feel like an equal partner. Dr. Martinez became my lifeline. She validated everything I was feeling, everything I was seeing. She pointed out the pattern of financial abuse. I was literally funding my own destruction. She encouraged me to document everything. I started keeping a journal hidden in my car. I joined an online support group under a fake name and found other women with terrifyingly similar stories. I opened a separate bank account. I was planning my exit. Then Derek found my journal. He claimed he was checking my car's oil, but I knew better. He photographed specific pages, the darkest entries where I described feeling crazy, where I mentioned divorce. Then he posted them on Facebook, tagging my family and coworkers. The comments poured in, calling me ungrateful and unstable. My boss called, concerned about my mental state. My own sister, told me I should be grateful to have a husband who put up with me. That's when it all clicked. I found his laptop open on the kitchen counter. There was a folder, innocently labeled evidence. Inside, edited text conversations. Recordings of our arguments taken completely out of context. Photos of a messy house with empty wine bottles I'd never even seen before. And the final document from a divorce attorney. He wasn't having an affair. He had been building a case to take everything in a divorce. The house I paid for, my savings, even alimony. His plan was to paint me as an unstable breadwinner who neglected him, claiming he sacrificed his career for mine. All those missing thousands from our joint account? Attorney fees. I sat there staring at the screen, and the pieces of his cruel puzzle finally fell into place. The systematic destruction of my credibility, the way he turned everyone against me. He wanted to destroy me and take everything I'd worked for. But here's the thing about keeping receipts. I kept them too. Every single purchase I made for him. Every transfer, every payment. 2 years of bank statements showing I'd funded our entire life while he played golf. I called my own attorney the very next day. Turns out documentation works both ways. I was actually relieved he wanted a divorce. I told her the difference was I had real evidence. Bank statements don't lie. She smiled and said the case looked strong. Derek didn't know yet that I found his folder. He was still playing the concerned husband on social media while I quietly prepared for war. He thought he'd been so clever. But he forgot one thing. I didn't become a director by being weak. The next morning Derek was extra sweet. He brought me coffee in bed, suggested couples counseling. I played along. I knew he was just gathering more ammunition. I went to work like normal, but my mind was racing. My assistant Piper noticed something was off. She brought me tea, closed my office door. I almost broke down right there, but I held it together. I had to be strategic now. That evening Derek had dinner ready. My favorite pasta, a bottle of wine. I pretended everything was fine. We ate in mostly silence. He kept refilling my wine glass. I noticed he wasn't drinking much himself. After dinner he suggested a movie. I said I had work to finish. He got that look in his eyes again, the one that meant trouble. I went to my home office and locked the door. I could hear him pacing outside. Then his phone rang. He took the call in the bedroom. I pressed my ear against the wall. He was talking to his mother, something about moving up the timeline. I heard my name several times. Then he mentioned my company's HR department. My blood went cold. The next day HR called me in. They'd received an anonymous email with excerpts from my journal. The parts about feeling overwhelmed and questioning my sanity. My HR director, Patricia, looked concerned. She asked if I needed time off. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. She nodded, but I could tell she was worried. She suggested I take a few personal days. I left the office feeling utterly defeated. Derek had struck first. I called my attorney from the parking garage. She told me to stay calm, keep documenting. She said his tactics were predictable. That helped a little. I drove to a coffee shop instead of going home. I needed to think. My phone buzzed with texts from Derek. He was asking where I was, worried about me, playing the concerned husband again. I ignored them. Then my sister called. Another Facebook post from Derek. A photo of our wedding with a long caption about trying to save our marriage. The comments were brutal, selfish, cold. Derek deserved better. I sat in that coffee shop for hours planning my next move. I couldn't let him win. I worked too hard for everything. I wasn't going to let him take it all away. I made a list. Open more bank accounts, change all my passwords, find a new place to stay. The list kept growing. When I finally went home that night, Derek was waiting. He had printed out pages from my work calendar, highlighting all my late meetings and business trips. He'd circled dates in red pen like some kind of detective. "See how often you chose work over us," he said, holding up the papers. I wanted to scream that someone had to pay the bills, but I bit my tongue. I was learning to play his game now. The next few days were a careful dance. I went to work, came home at reasonable hours, played the beautiful wife, while secretly meeting with my attorney during lunch breaks. She was building our countercase methodically. Every receipt I'd saved, every bank statement, every text message where Derek asked for money. The evidence was overwhelming when laid out properly. Derek scheduled our first couples counseling session for the following week. I knew it was a trap, but I had to go along with it. The therapist he chose? Someone his mother had recommended. I did my research. She specialized in traditional family values. Of course she did. I started recording our conversations at home on my phone, hidden in my pocket. Two could play at gathering evidence. The night before the counseling session, Derek sat me down for what he called an honest conversation. He had a notebook full of grievances. Times I'd missed dinner, weekends I'd worked, business trips that lasted too long. He read each one aloud like a prosecutor presenting evidence. I sat there quietly, my phone recording, as he painted himself as the victim of my ambition. When he finished, he looked at me expectantly, waiting for an apology that would never come. Instead, I simply said, "I understand how you feel." It was a phrase Dr. Martinez had taught me. Acknowledge without admitting fault. Derek's face darkened. He wasn't used to me not crumbling. The couple's counseling session was exactly what I expected. The therapist, Joan, spent most of the time nodding sympathetically at Derek while he talked about feeling neglected. Her office smelled like lavender and disappointment, with motivational posters about communication that felt more like accusations. I tried to bring up the financial situation, but she redirected the conversation back to my work schedule. Derek sat there looking wounded, occasionally wiping away what I'm pretty sure were fake tears. Joan suggested I consider reducing my hours at work to focus on my marriage. I said I'd think about it, knowing full well I wouldn't. After the session, Derek was practically glowing. He thought he'd won. On the drive home, he talked about how helpful Joan was, how we should see her twice a week. The autumn leaves were falling around us, but all I could focus on was his smug satisfaction. I agreed to everything. Let him think he was in control. My attorney had advised me to appear cooperative while we gathered more evidence. That night, I found Derek going through my work bag. He said he was looking for gum, but I saw him photographing my planner with his phone, angling it to catch the light from the desk lamp. I pretended not to notice. Later, I heard him on the phone with his mother again. They were discussing something about my company's employee handbook. I couldn't make out all the details, but I heard the words morality clause several times. His voice had that conspiratorial tone that made my stomach turn. The next morning, I woke up to find Derek had changed the password on our home computer. When I asked about it, he said it was for security reasons, his eyes not quite meeting mine. He'd also installed some kind of tracking app on my phone. I discovered it when my battery started draining faster than usual. I left it there, let him track me going to work and back. He didn't know about the burner phone I'd bought for communicating with my attorney, hidden in the lining of my laptop bag. At work, things got worse. Patricia from HR called me in again. Someone had sent them photos of me at a bar with male colleagues from 6 months ago. Just a normal team happy hour, but the photos were angled to look intimate. She asked if there was anything I needed to disclose about workplace relationships. I explained they were just coworkers celebrating a project completion. She believed me but warned they were monitoring the situation. Her expression was sympathetic but professional. I started eating lunch at my desk to avoid giving Derek any ammunition. My assistant Piper noticed the change. She'd bring me soup and sit with me sometimes, the steam from her coffee mug creating a small barrier between us and the rest of the office. One day, she mentioned that someone had called asking about my schedule. They'd claimed to be from a doctor's office, but something felt off to her. She'd refused to give any information. Smart girl. Derek's behavior at home escalated. He started picking fights over nothing. The way I loaded the dishwasher, the thermostat temperature, how I folded his shirts. Everything was wrong. He'd yell, then immediately apologize, saying he was just stressed about our marriage. Classic manipulation, but I was too tired to care anymore. The house felt smaller every day. One evening, I came home to find Derek's mother in our living room. She was going through photo albums, setting aside pictures of me. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across her face, making her look even more severe. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was helping Derek preserve memories. The way she said it made my skin crawl. I noticed she'd already removed several photos from their frames, leaving empty spaces like missing teeth. That weekend, Derek suggested we visit his family. I knew it was another ambush, but I went anyway. His mother had invited his sister, his aunt, and 2 cousins. They spent 3 hours telling me how I was failing as a wife. His aunt actually brought printed articles about working women destroying families, the pages crisp and highlighted in yellow. His mother had prepared a spreadsheet of all the times I'd worked late in the past year. Derek sat there nodding along like this was all perfectly normal, occasionally adding his own wounded observations. On the drive home, I finally snapped. I told Derek this had to stop. He pulled over on a dark stretch of highway and started screaming about how I was abandoning him, just like his father had. It was the first time he'd ever mentioned his dad. He cried real tears this time, saying he couldn't lose me too. For a moment I almost felt bad. Then I remembered the folder on his laptop. The next week Eric started showing up at my office. He'd bring me lunch, insist on eating together in the lobby where everyone could see us. The security guard started recognizing him, waving him through with friendly smiles. He'd hold my hand too tightly, kiss me in front of my colleagues, making a show of being the devoted husband. My coworkers thought it was sweet. They didn't see how his fingers dug into my wrist when I tried to pull away. Patricia from HR pulled me aside after one of these visits. She said while Eric seemed nice, the frequent visits were becoming disruptive. I apologized and said I'd talk to him. She gave me a long look and asked if everything was really okay. I wanted to tell her everything, but I just nodded and went back to my office, my heels clicking too loudly on the polished floor. That night, I told Eric he couldn't keep coming to my workplace. He exploded, accused me of being ashamed of him, said I was probably cheating with someone at the office. He demanded to see my phone. I handed it over, knowing he'd find nothing on it. He scrolled through every message, every email, every photo. When he found nothing, he threw it against the wall. The screen cracked, a spiderweb of fractures across my life. But it still worked. I started sleeping in the guest room, claiming I had a cold and didn't want to get him sick. He didn't fight it, which surprised me. I found out why the next morning. He'd installed a camera in the bedroom. I spotted the tiny red light when I went to get dressed. I left it there and started changing in the bathroom. The cold tiles, a stark reminder of how far we'd fallen. My attorney called with an update. She'd found something interesting in Derek's financial records. He'd been making regular transfers to his mother's account. Not huge amounts, but consistent. She was digging deeper. I felt a spark of hope. Maybe we'd find something to turn the tables. At work, I threw myself into a new project, a big campaign for a major client. I needed the distraction. Piper helped me stay focused. She'd become my unofficial bodyguard, screening calls and visitors with the efficiency of a seasoned gatekeeper. When Eric showed up, she'd tell him I was in meetings. He'd leave angry messages, but at least he wasn't disrupting my workplace anymore. The second counseling session with Joan was worse than the first. This time Eric had prepared a presentation. Actual slides showing graphs of my work hours versus time spent at home. He'd calculated percentages and everything. Joan was impressed by his dedication. She suggested I take a sabbatical from work to focus on repair. I said I'd consider it, knowing I'd never do it. The lavender scent seemed stronger this time, almost suffocating. After the session, Eric wanted to celebrate what he called our breakthrough. He took me to the same steakhouse where he'd been having his networking dinners. The irony wasn't lost on me. He ordered for both of us without asking what I wanted. When the waiter looked at me for confirmation, I just smiled and nodded. Pick your battles. The steak tasted like cardboard. During dinner, Eric laid out his vision for our future. I would cut back to part-time work. We'd start trying for children. His mother would help with childcare. We'd sell my car since I wouldn't need it as much. He had it all planned out. I listened and made appropriate noises while mentally calculating how much money I could move to my separate account without him noticing. The restaurant's dim lighting couldn't hide the manic gleam in his eyes. That night, Eric tried to initiate intimacy for the first time in months. I said I was still feeling sick. He didn't push it, but I saw the anger flash in his eyes. He went to sleep on the couch like usual. I lay awake planning my next moves, the guest room ceiling becoming my map to freedom. The following day, I met with my attorney during lunch. She'd found more financial irregularities. Eric and his mother had opened a joint business account 2 years ago, right around the time he'd stopped working. They'd been moving money through it in small amounts. She suspected they were hiding assets, but needed more time to trace the transactions. She also suggested I start looking for an apartment. Things were going to move fast once we filed. I spent my evenings researching rentals on my work computer, small one-bedroom apartments I could afford on my own. The thought of having my own space made me dizzy with relief. I booked several options and made appointments to view them during lunch breaks. Each listing felt like a small rebellion. Derek noticed my improved mood and got suspicious. He started asking more questions about my day, who I ate lunch with, what meetings I had. I kept my answers vague but consistent. He installed more tracking apps on my phone. I let him while doing all my real planning on the burner phone and work computer. His mother started calling me directly. Long guilt trips about family values and standing by your man. She'd cry about how hard Derek was trying, how cold I was being. I put her on speaker and do other things while she ranted. Sometimes I'd record the calls on my burner phone. My attorney said they might be useful. One night, I came home to find Derek had rearranged all the furniture. He said he'd read that changing your environment could save a marriage. Everything was in the wrong place. My home office was now a meditation room, with crystals and incense holders. My books were boxed up in the garage. He'd even moved my clothes to the smaller closet. I said nothing, just started mentally packing for my escape. The third counseling session was when things really escalated. Joan suggested we do an exercise where we shared our deepest fears. Derek went first, talking about his fear of abandonment, how his father had left when he was young, how he'd never felt good enough. It was actually sad, and for a moment I remembered why I'd fallen in love with him. Then it was my turn. I said my deepest fear was losing myself. Joan's face pinched like she'd eaten something sour. She spent the rest of the session explaining how marriage required sacrifice and compromise, looking pointedly at me the entire time. In the parking lot afterward, Derek accused me of sabotaging our therapy. He said I was being selfish and narcissistic, that I cared more about myself than our marriage. I let him rant while I sat quietly in the passenger seat. When he finally ran out of steam, I told him I was trying my best. He grabbed my wrist, hard enough to leave marks. "Try harder," he said. I started wearing long sleeves to work. Piper noticed but didn't say anything. She just brought me extra coffee and made sure I ate lunch. Patricia from HR stopped by my office to check in. She mentioned they'd received more anonymous emails about my mental state. I told her I was handling it. She left her direct number and said to call if I needed anything. That weekend, Derek's mother threw a surprise anniversary party for us. We'd been married 5 years. She'd invited all their family and friends, people I'd never even met. She'd created a slideshow of our wedding photos and early dating pictures. Everyone kept telling Derek how lucky he was to have such a successful wife. His jaw got tighter with each comment. During the party, his mother pulled me into the kitchen. She handed me a document. It was a post-nuptial agreement. She said it would make Derek feel more secure in the marriage. I glanced through it. It basically gave him half of everything I'd earned during our marriage plus alimony. I told her I'd have my lawyer look at it. Her face went cold. "I thought you wanted to save your marriage," she said. I excused myself and locked myself in the bathroom. I called my attorney from my burner phone. She told me not to sign anything and to get out of there. I splashed water on my face and went back to the party. I smiled and mingled and pretended everything was fine. Derek watched me like a hawk the entire time. The drive home was silent. Derek was furious I hadn't signed the agreement. When we got home, he went straight to his laptop. I could hear him typing furiously. I knew he was probably writing another email to my HR department. I didn't care anymore. I was too tired to care. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that postnuptial agreement. How long had they been planning this? Was the whole marriage a setup? I thought back to when we'd first met. Derek had been charming and attentive. He pursued me relentlessly, said he'd never met anyone like me. Now I wondered if he'd targeted me specifically. The next morning Derek was gone when I woke up. He'd left a note saying he was spending the day with his mother. I took the opportunity to pack a go bag. Essential documents, some clothes, toiletries. I hid it in my car under some work files just in case. At work, I finalized the big campaign presentation. It was some of my best work. The client loved it. My boss, Dennis, pulled me aside afterward to congratulate me. He mentioned there might be a promotion coming, vice president of marketing. The timing couldn't have been better. I'd need the salary increase for my new apartment. When I got home, Derek was waiting with Joan, the therapist. An intervention, he called it. They sat me down and took turns explaining how my career was destroying our marriage. Joan had prepared notes about work-life balance and feminine energy. Derek cried again about feeling abandoned. I sat there for 2 hours listening to them. When they finally asked me to respond, I said I'd think about everything they'd said. Joan looked disappointed. She clearly expected more drama. After Joan left, Derek showed me printed emails between him and my sister. She'd agreed that I needed help, that I'd changed since getting promoted, that I wasn't the same person who'd married him. He'd been building his case with my own family. I felt the betrayal like a physical pain, my own sister taking his side. That night I viewed the first apartment, a small one-bedroom in a security building. The landlord was a woman named Virginia who'd been through a divorce herself. She didn't ask too many questions when I paid the deposit in cash. I could move in whenever I was ready. I sat in my car afterward and cried, not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief. Derek sensed something had shifted. He became more attentive, bringing me flowers, cooking dinner. He suggested date nights and weekend trips, playing the perfect husband. I went along with it while secretly moving my belongings. A few clothes here, some jewelry there, nothing he'd notice missing. My attorney called with a breakthrough. She'd traced the money movements. Derek and his mother had done this before. 3 times with other women. Small-scale financial manipulation that ended with the women paying to make them go away. Never enough to trigger legal action, but enough to fund their lifestyle. She was building a pattern of behavior case. The 4th counseling session never happened. I called Joan and canceled, saying I had a work emergency. Derek was livid. He accused me of not caring about our marriage, of choosing work over him again. I apologized and promised to reschedule. We both knew I was lying. Instead of counseling, I met with my attorney. We went over the divorce papers. She'd included everything. The financial abuse, the emotional manipulation, the attempts to sabotage my career, all tied into the pattern she'd found with his exes. She was confident I'd keep everything. Derek would get nothing, just as it should be. That night, Derek went through my car while I was in the shower. He found the go bag. When I came out, he was sitting on the bed with it open in front of him. His face was calm, which scared me more than anger would have. He asked where I was planning to go. I told him I just wanted to be prepared for emergencies. He didn't believe me, but he didn't push it. He just put the bag back in my car and went to sleep on the couch. The next day at work, I couldn't concentrate. I kept waiting for Derek to escalate, for the other shoe to drop. Piper noticed my anxiety and suggested we take a walk. I told her everything. She wasn't surprised. She'd suspected something was wrong for months. She offered to let me stay with her, but I showed her the keys to my new apartment. She hugged me and said she was proud of me. When I got home that evening, Derek's mother was there again, this time with a man I didn't recognize. He introduced himself as their family attorney. They wanted to discuss the postnuptial agreement again. I told them I wouldn't sign anything without my lawyer present. Derek's mother's mask finally slipped. She called me an ungrateful witch who was trying to destroy her son. The attorney tried to calm her down, but she was on a roll. She admitted they'd been planning this for months, that Derek deserved compensation for supporting my career, that I owed them. I recorded the entire conversation on my phone. When they finally left, Derek tried to apologize for his mother. Said she was just protective. I told him I understood and went to bed. I didn't sleep. I just lay there planning my escape. The next morning I went to work early. I decided today was the day. I couldn't take another night in that house. I called my attorney and told her to file the papers. She said she'd have Derek served by the end of the day. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I spent the morning finishing up projects and delegating tasks. Piper helped me pack up my personal items from my office, just in case Derek tried to make a scene. Dennis stopped by to officially offer me the VP position. I accepted immediately. The salary increase would more than cover my new apartment and legal fees. At lunch, I went to my new apartment and dropped off the boxes from my office. The space was small, but it was mine. I sat on the floor and cried again. Happy tears. This time I was really doing this. I was getting out. I went back to work and tried to act normal. Around 3 p.m. my phone started blowing up. Derek had been served. He was calling and texting nonstop. I turned off my phone and focused on work. Piper fielded calls to my office line, telling him I was in meetings. She was a rock star. At 5 p.m. I knew I had to face him. I drove home slowly, preparing for war. When I pulled up, his mother's car was in the driveway, of course. I took a deep breath and went inside. They were both in the living room waiting for me. Derek's face was red and blotchy. His mother was holding the divorce papers like they were contaminated. The moment I walked in, she started screaming about betrayal and deception. I let her rant while I set down my purse and kicked off my heels. Derek just sat there, staring at me with this wounded look. When his mother finally paused for breath, I told them both to leave. My house, my rules. She laughed and said it wouldn't be my house for long. That's when Derek finally spoke up. He said he'd been expecting this, that he knew I'd been planning something. He pulled out a folder of his own. More doctored evidence. More twisted narratives. He'd even gotten statements from some of my coworkers saying I seemed stressed lately. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Told them I was documenting this interaction for my attorney. His mother tried to grab my phone, but I stepped back. She called me several choice names I won't repeat. Derek told her to calm down, but she was beyond reasoning. She started throwing things. Picture frames, coasters, whatever she could reach. I kept recording. Derek tried to play good cop. He suggested we talk without his mother. I said there was nothing to discuss. The papers were filed. He needed to pack his things and leave. He laughed and said I couldn't kick him out of his own home. I reminded him whose name was on the deed, whose money paid the mortgage. His face went dark. His mother started making threats. Said they'd destroy me, ruin my career, make sure I never worked in marketing again. I kept recording. Let them dig their own grave. She mentioned their attorney friend, how he'd helped them before with Derek's exes, how they knew exactly how to play the system. Derek tried to shut her up, but she was on a roll. She actually admitted to the fake evidence, the staged photos, the edited conversations. Said they'd done it before and it always worked. Women always caved when faced with public humiliation. She looked so proud of herself. Derek finally realized what was happening. He lunged for my phone, but I was already backing toward the door. I told them they had 1 hour to get out or I'd call the police. Derek said I was bluffing. I showed him I already had 911 dialed. Just needed to hit call. His mother started screaming again about ungrateful wives and gold diggers. The irony of her calling me a gold digger when they'd been planning to take everything I'd earned. I almost laughed. I went to my car and waited. Called my attorney and sent her the recording. She said it was perfect, exactly what we needed. I watched through the window as they argued inside. Derek was pacing. His mother was still throwing things. After 30 minutes they finally left. His mother peeled out of the driveway like a teenager. I went back inside and surveyed the damage. Broken glass everywhere. Pictures torn from frames. My wedding china smashed on the kitchen floor. I took photos of everything. More evidence. Then I started cleaning up. Felt symbolic somehow. Sweeping up the broken pieces of my marriage. Derek came back an hour later with a police officer. Said I was having a mental breakdown and had attacked his mother. The officer looked skeptical, especially when he saw the destruction inside. I showed him my recording. He listened to the whole thing. Told Derek he was lucky I wasn't pressing charges for destruction of property. Derek tried to argue, but the officer shut him down. The officer asked if I felt safe. I said no. He offered to stay while Derek packed some belongings. Derek grabbed clothes and his laptop. Tried to take some other things, but I had receipts ready. The officer was impressed by my organization. Derek left with 2 suitcases and a garbage bag of stuff. The officer gave me his card and said to call if Derek came back. That night I changed all the locks, set up a security camera, moved my important documents to a safety deposit box. I was taking no chances. I ordered pizza and ate it on the floor of my empty living room. It was the best meal I'd had in months. The next morning Derek started his social media campaign. Long posts about being blindsided by divorce, how he'd tried so hard to make things work, how I'd chosen career over family. The comments poured in. Support for him, criticism for me. I screenshotted everything from my attorney. Let him hang himself with his own words. My sister called, demanding an explanation. I sent her the recording of Derek's mother. She went quiet for a long time. Then she apologized, said she'd had no idea that Derek had seemed so sincere. She offered to help however she could. I asked her to just stay out of it for now. At work, I met with HR, showed them everything, the recordings, the fake evidence Derek had created, the pattern with his exes. Patricia was horrified. She assured me my job was safe and they'd support me however needed. She also increased security protocols. Derek wouldn't be allowed in the building anymore. My attorney called with more news. She'd found 2 of Derek's exes. They were willing to provide statements about their experiences, similar patterns. Love bombing, isolation, financial manipulation, then threats when they tried to leave. One had paid him $20,000 just to go away. The other had lost her house. They were both relieved someone was finally standing up to him. Derek tried to come by my office. Security turned him away. He made a scene in the lobby, yelling about his rights as my husband, how I was keeping him from his wife. Security had to escort him out. It was all caught on camera. More evidence of instability. His mother started calling my work directly, leaving voicemails about what a terrible person I was, how I destroyed her son. HR documented every call. She made the mistake of mentioning the previous women they targeted. Patricia added those recordings to our file. I moved into my new apartment officially. It was small but perfect. No one else had the address. I felt safe for the first time in months. I bought new furniture. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, chosen by me, paid for by me. No one could take it away. Derek hired a new attorney, a bigger firm. They sent intimidating letters about my obligations as a wife. My attorney laughed, said they were grasping at straws. Our evidence was solid. Their case was falling apart. She filed a restraining order based on the harassment. The restraining order hearing was interesting. Derek showed up looking haggard. His mother came too, dressed like she was going to church. They tried to paint me as unstable and vindictive. Then my attorney played the recordings. The judge's face got stonier with each admission. When Derek's mother's voice clearly stated they'd done this before, the judge had heard enough. Restraining order granted. Derek and his mother couldn't come within 500 feet of me, my home, or my workplace. Derek tried to argue, but his attorney shut him up. His mother started crying about her poor son. The judge told her to control herself or be removed from court. It was beautiful. After the hearing, my attorney pulled me aside. The exes wanted to meet me. They'd formed a little support group, women who'd survived Derek and his mother. I agreed to meet them for coffee. It was surreal hearing their stories so similar to mine. The gradual isolation, the financial drain, the gaslighting. But they'd all rebuilt their lives. Gave me hope. Derek's social media campaign backfired when one of his exes posted her story. She included receipts, bank statements showing money transfers, text messages of his threats, photos of property damage. Other women started coming forward. Not just exes, but women he'd briefly dated, all with similar stories of manipulation and requests for money. My attorney was building a beautiful case. Financial fraud, emotional abuse, defamation, harassment. The evidence was overwhelming. Derek's new attorney tried to negotiate, offered to walk away if I gave him $50,000. My attorney laughed and countered with a cease and desist. No money, no contact, just go away. His mother made a crucial mistake. She approached one of my coworkers at a coffee shop, tried to get dirt on me, offered money for information. My coworker, Campbell, recorded the whole thing and sent it straight to me. I forwarded it to my attorney and the police. Witness tampering is a crime. The police finally took interest. 2 detectives came to interview me. They'd connected Derek and his mother to similar schemes in 3 states, always targeting successful women, always the same pattern. They were building a fraud case. I gave them everything I had. Recordings, documents, contact information for the other victims. Derek panicked when he found out about the investigation. He tried calling from different numbers, left voicemails begging to talk, said it was all his mother's idea. That he really loved me. That we could work things out. I saved every message. Let him incriminate himself further. His mother was arrested first. Fraud charges related to the fake business account. She'd been claiming the money as consulting fees, but couldn't prove any actual work. The IRS got involved. Turns out they hadn't been paying taxes on their ill-gotten gains. Tax evasion added to the charges. Derek tried to distance himself from his mother. Posted about being manipulated by her. How she'd controlled him his whole life. Some people bought it, but the evidence was clear. He'd been an active participant. The other victims' testimonies made that obvious. His new attorney dropped him. I got promoted to VP as planned. Threw myself into work. Felt good to focus on something positive. My team was supportive. Piper became my right hand. We launched the campaign I'd been working on. It was a huge success. Everything Derek said I couldn't do while being a good wife, I was doing better without him. The divorce proceedings were swift. With the criminal investigation ongoing, Derek had no leverage. He got nothing. No alimony, no property, no claim to anything I'd earned. The judge actually ordered him to pay my legal fees. His mother's assets were frozen, so he couldn't even borrow from her. 6 months after I filed, the divorce was final. I celebrated with the other survivors at a nice restaurant. We toasted to freedom and new beginnings. One of them had started a blog about financial abuse in relationships. Another was working with a domestic violence organization. We'd all found ways to help others avoid what we'd been through. Derek was arrested 2 weeks later. Fraud, extortion, harassment. His mother was already facing trial. They tried to blame each other. The prosecution had statements from 7 women across 3 states. The evidence was damning. Local news picked up the story. I declined to be interviewed, but some of the others spoke out. I focused on my new life. Work was going great. I'd made new friends, started dating casually. Nothing serious, but it felt good to be desired without ulterior motives. I joined a kickboxing class, bought plants for my apartment. Simple things that made me happy. The trial was a media circus. Derek's mother tried to play the victim. Said she was just protecting her son. The prosecutor destroyed her with evidence. Bank records, text messages, the recorded admissions. Derek took a plea deal. 2 years in prison, his mother got 5. They'd have to pay restitution to all their victims. I got a check for the money they'd stolen. Not everything, but enough. I donated half to the domestic violence organization. Used the rest to take a vacation. First time I traveled alone. It was liberating. No one to answer to. No one tracking my movements. Just me and the beach and a good book. When I got back, there was a letter from Derek sent from prison, full of apologies and excuses. How his mother had warped him. How he'd really loved me once. How sorry he was. I threw it away without finishing it. He didn't deserve any more of my time. Life moved forward. I bought a house, a small one but mine. Piper helped me move in. We painted the walls bright colors Derek would have hated. I adopted a cat, named him Freedom. He slept on whichever side of the bed he wanted. No one complained about his fur on the couch. My sister and I rebuilt our relationship. She apologized repeatedly for taking Derek's side. I forgave her. She'd been manipulated too. We started having weekly dinners. She brought wine. I cooked. We talked about everything except Derek. He didn't deserve space in our conversations. A year later, I ran into Joan, the therapist, at a grocery store. She tried to apologize, said she'd had no idea, that she'd been fooled too. I just smiled and walked away. Some bridges weren't worth rebuilding. She'd chosen her side. Now she had to live with it. The other survivors and I stayed in touch. We called ourselves the Phoenix Club. Rising from the ashes and all that. We met monthly for dinner. Shared updates on our lives, celebrated promotions and new relationships, supported each other through bad days. It was the family I'd chosen. Derek got out on parole after 18 months, tried to contact me through a mutual friend. I reminded him about the restraining order. He disappeared after that. Heard he moved to another state, started using a different name, probably looking for his next target. But now there were warnings about him online. The Phoenix Club made sure of that. His mother served her full sentence. No parole for her. She'd been the mastermind after all. The IRS took everything she had. The house, the car, the bank accounts. She'd have nothing when she got out, just like she'd planned for me. Karma really is something. I kept thriving. Got another promotion, started mentoring young women in business, shared my story when appropriate, taught them to watch for red flags, to trust their instincts, to never let anyone dim their light. Some had their own stories. We formed a support network at work. 3 years after the divorce, I met someone new. Paul. He was nothing like Eric. He had his own career, his own friends, his own life. He celebrated my successes instead of resenting them. When I worked late, he brought me dinner at the office. When I got promoted again, he threw me a party. He never once suggested I should work less. We took things slow. I was upfront about my past. He listened without judgment. Never used it against me. Never suggested I should be over it by now. He understood when I needed space, respected my boundaries, did his own laundry, revolutionary concepts. The Phoenix Club approved. They grilled him at dinner one night. He passed with flying colors, especially when he offered to help one of them move without being asked, and when he remembered everyone's names and stories. Small things that meant everything. I still see Dr. Martinez, not as often, but she's been a vital part of my journey. She helped me understand the patterns. How predators like Eric choose their victims. How they break them down systematically. How none of it, absolutely none of it, was my fault. And that, in the end, was the greatest freedom of all.